and we started with this Modigliani and Miller theory about dividend payouts or payout policy. So according to Modigliani and Miller, in a perfect market where there are no transaction costs, where there are no taxes, right, where there are no market frictions, dividend policy is irrelevant, right? Because the total firm value remains unchanged. But when we introduce market frictions, then we know that the dividend policy matters. So we looked at the effect of taxes. So we should use a cash distribution mechanism that has lower tax rate. So should we use dividends or should we use repurchases? Whichever has the lower tax rate for investors, right? So typically share repurchases are taxed at a lower rate. So that's why we have seen that share repurchases have gained a lot of momentum in the past few years. Okay, so that was dividend policy. And then we started talking about the rights issue, right? I showed you how rights issues work and what is the X right price, but I couldn't show you the example of it. So in today's session, that's what we are going to do. So in the first part, I'll quickly recap what the rights issues are and how to calculate the X right price, okay, or how to calculate the value of a right. And then in the later part, which is actually the main objective of this session, we'll talk about merger and acquisitions. So rights issues. What are rights issues? We defined it in the last week. Anyone? Rights issues? Come on, there must be someone, right? Tell me. If you won't tell me, then I'll have to pick someone. Okay. Anyone wants to volunteer? What are right issues? A bit louder.
Shareholders can buy new shares at a discount.
Right. So rights issues. When a company offers existing shareholders the right to buy additional shares, and normally these additional shares are offered to existing shareholders at a discounted price, right? So that's what we mean by rights issue. So, and these rights issues are issued in proportion to investors' existing shareholders. One of the key benefits of rights issue is that it does not result in dilution. What is dilution? The dilution represents or means that proportional stake in the firm goes down. So as an investor, if your proportional stake in the firm goes down, that's what we call dilution in finance. Right? So the key benefit of rights issue is that it avoids dilution. So existing shareholders maintain whatever their proportionate ownership in the firm is. So these are issued in proportion to the number of shares that existing investors already hold. So they will typically be, for example, an existing shareholder can buy X number of new shares provided they already hold N number of old shares. Okay, then we talked about the drawbacks and benefits of rights issue. And this is the example that we started using to explain what rights issues are and how to value these rights issues. So this is an example of Standard Chartered rights issue that was made in 2015. So the key information is highlighted in red. So what is being offered? 2 new ordinary shares for every 7 existing ordinary shares. So what this means is, how do we call it? 2 for 7. So if you already own 7 shares, you're entitled to buy 2 additional shares, right? So 2 for 7 means if you already own 7 shares, you're entitled to buy 2 additional shares. And then the other piece of key information is the price. At what price you can buy these additional shares? 465 pence, right? So for each share, you would have to pay £4 and 65 pence. And then this is the right price, right date. So after which your rights will expire. So you must hold shares before this date in order to allow you to exercise your right to buy additional shares. So 18th November is the right date or the record date, after which you cannot use your shares to buy additional shares through the rights issue. Okay, so existing shareholders need to hold 7 old shares, in order to entitle them to buy 2 additional new shares. So we looked at these 3 options, what they can do if they were given these rights. So we already noted that the subscription price was 465 pence, or in other words, £4 and 65 pence per share. And the market price on 16th of November 2015 was actually £6. So you can see that if you want to buy the same share of the same company from the market, you would have to pay £6. But being an existing shareholder, and given that the company is making a rights issue, it entitles you to buy the same share at a discounted price, which is £4 and 65 pence. So what is the amount of discount? £1 35 pence per share. So £6 is the market price, right? £6 is the market price, and £4 and 65 pence is what we call the subscription price, right? So it entitles existing shareholders to a discount of £1 and 35 pence per share. So what can shareholders do with their rights? We went through these 3 options. I'll quickly go through them here again. So option 1 is take up all or some of the rights. So as long as someone has 7 all shares, they can buy 2 new shares by paying a total cost of £9 and 30 pence. How did we get £9 and 30 pence? For 1 share, you pay £4 65 pence, right? And for 2 shares, that's £9 and 30 pence. So as long as someone has 7 old shares, they can get 2 additional shares by paying £9 and 30 pence. So that's if they take or exercise their right to buy additional shares. Option 2 is that you can sell some of these rights, right? So these rights have value. The reason they have value is because they entitle you to buy additional shares at a discount. So discount is what creates value, right? So you can sell your right to buy additional shares to someone else, okay? And that's what we call the value of a right. So you'll sell that right to buy additional shares to someone else at the value of the right. Okay, and the third option is to do nothing which would result in a sure loss, because you could use you could have used your rights to buy additional shares at a discount. But if you decide to not exercise your right, then it will result in a sure loss, right? So option 3 is not recommended. So either you should exercise all of your rights to buy additional shares, or you should sell your right to buy additional shares to someone else. So we looked at these pros and cons in the previous session, so I'll skip through these. So let's look at the mechanics, so how these rights issue work. So the first thing that the management needs to do is to determine the discount that it's going to offer, right? So you can calculate the subscription price, PS, as the present market value, P naught, less the discount, right? Okay, so P naught 1 minus D, D represents the discount, right? So that is what we call the subscription price. And we know that the subscription price should be lower than the market price. And that's what creates the value of the right. Okay, so P naught 1 minus D will be lower than the market value. And the difference between the two is what we call the, and the difference between the two is the amount of discount, right? That's offered in a rights issue. The next thing you need to, the next thing management needs to determine is the amount of capital that they are going to raise. So let's say we call that amount F, right? So this is the amount that the management needs to raise by issuing these additional shares to existing shareholders. So how many new shares you need to issue to get F, right? How many new shares? So we represent new shares by N star, right? These are additional shares issued to the rights issue. So we need to generate F, right? So we divide it by price that you get per share, which is a subscription price, right? Because these new or additional shares are offered for sale at a subscription price, right? So funds needed F divided by subscription price gives us the number of new shares that the management would issue at subscription price in order to raise amount F. So if a company already has N all shares in total, the number of rights per new share can be calculated as the following fraction. So all shares divided by new shares, and that will give you the number of rights. Okay, so remember in our example, what was the number of rights? 2 for 7. So this ratio was 2 for 7. For every 7 whole shares, it entitles you to buy 2 new shares. Okay, so what will happen to the market price after the discount, after the rights issue? We call it X right price, right? Okay, so what will happen to price after the rights issue? You should expect the X right price to be lower than the current market price. Why? Because these new shares are offered at a discount, right? Okay, so N old shares valued at the old price P naught, and N new shares valued at the subscription price PS, and we know PS is lower than P naught, right, because of the discount. So the X right price must be between P naught and PS. Okay. So let's calculate this X right price. So X right price is simply the proportion of all shares times the old price plus the proportion of new shares times the subscription price, right? So N is the number of old shares divided by total number of shares now. What's the total number of shares now? All shares plus the new shares, right? So N, all shares divided by total number of shares, that gives you the proportion of all shares, and you times it by the old market price, plus the proportion of new shares, which is N star, which is the new number of shares, again divided by total number of shares, which is all shares plus the new shares. So this term is the percentage of new shares times, but these new shares are not issued at the market price, but issued at the subscription price, PS. Okay, so X right price is simply the weighted average price. Okay, so old weight of all shares or proportion of all shares times the old price plus the proportion of new shares times the subscription price. So the X right price will be something in between. So how do we calculate the value of a right then? So the value of the right would simply be the market price minus the X right price. The difference between the two equals the value of the right. Right? So the value of the right, the expected capital gain to shareholders is simply the difference between the value of shares or price of share after the issue, which we call the X right price, and the value at which they bought it, which is the subscription price. Okay, so let's look at our example. So I explained this to you in the last week as well. So all we have to do is to apply it to our example. So in our example, we had an investor needed to have 7 old shares to buy or to allow them the right to buy 2 new shares. Subscription price per share was £4.65. The current market price before rights issue were announced, before the rights issue was £6. So we call it pre-rights price, £6. Okay, so assume that a shareholder with 7 old shares who exercised his or her right to buy 2 new shares, what will be the total value of his shares? So he has 7 old shares, right? And the value of each share is £6, right? So 7 times 6 plus, if he or she exercises the right to buy additional shares, so he or she will get 2 new shares, but for each of those 2 shares, they will pay £4.65, right? So at the end, the shareholder will have 9 shares, right? 7 old shares, priced at 6, 2 new shares, for which the investor paid the subscription price, £4.65. So the total value of his holdings or her holdings would be £51.30, right? So the number of shares once he or she has exercised his or her right will be 7 old shares plus 2 new shares. So the total shares would be 9. So what's the average price of the share now? The total value of these shares is £51.30. Total number of shares, 9. So what's the price? What's the average price? 51.3 divided by 9. That gives you the average price, which is £5.70 per share. So what is the value of one right then? £6 is the pre-right price minus the X right price, £6, which is £5 and 70 pence, which is we just calculated. So the value of one right is 30 pence per share. Okay. So you can see the share price has dropped from £6, which is the pre-write price, to £5 and 7 pence, which is the ex-write price, right? Price after the rights issue. So what do you think? Does it mean that shareholder made a capital loss? What do you guys think? Did shareholders end up making a loss? Because prior to the rights issue, each share that they hold that they held had a value of £6. But after the rights issue, the price dropped from 6 to 5.7. Does it mean that they had a capital loss? Yes or no? No? Or you need to have a think? Okay, so let's see if they made a capital loss or not. If the total value of the shareholding is unchanged, then it means they did not make a loss. If the value of the shareholding dropped, then it means they had incurred a loss, right? So let's see whether they had made a loss or not. So in our example, the X right price, PX, is £5 and 70 pence, which we calculated, right? Which is the average price after the rights issue, minus, but they did not pay £5 and 70 pence for the new shares. They only paid £4 and 65 pence, right? So what is their gain? Their gain is £1 and 5 pence per new share, right? Okay, but that's for one share. The offer was 2 for 7, right? Okay, so if they bought 2 additional shares, what's the total gain then? £1 and 5 pence on a per share basis times 2, because they bought 2 additional shares. So the total gain is £2 and 10 pence, right? So that's the gain part. And why did you end up with this gain? Because you were existing shareholders, and being existing shareholders, the right issue entitled you to buy 2 additional shares at a discounted price, right? So the total gain that you'll make, as long as you had 7 old shares and you exercise your right to buy 2 additional shares, the total gain that you'll make is £2 and 10 pence. Right. Okay, so after the rights issue, what do we know? That the shareholder anticipates a capital loss, right? Pre-right price was £6 and ex-right price is £5 and 70 pence, right? So the loss per share is 30 pence, right? Okay. So, but you incurred this loss on 7 shares, right? Because you need to have 7 shares to allow you to buy 2 additional shares, right? So the total loss would be 30 pence loss per share times 7, right? So the total loss is exactly equal to the total gain. So shareholders, as a result of rights issue, existing shareholders, as a result of rights issue, neither gain nor loss. Okay, so their total gain due to exercising the right is £2 and £2 and 10 pence, and their total loss due to decrease in price from from pre-rights price to ex-right price is exactly equal to the gain that they made as a result of exercising their right to buy additional shares at a discounted price. Okay, so the capital gain and loss offset each other. The shareholder wealth remains unchanged. So the price drop is simply mechanical and does not imply a real fall in value, because the loss in value due to price fall is exactly equal to the gain that they make when they buy additional shares at a discounted price. So theoretically, the rights issue does not carry any new information. With no information being released, the firm value should not change. The rights issue simply increase the firm value, total firm value, by the amount of capital that's been raised through the rights issue, and the amount of capital raised in, we denoted it by F, right? So firm value will increase by the amount of capital that's raised using these rights issues. Okay, good. So the next thing that I want you to do is to quickly uh, go to evox.com. Okay, you can use an app or you can go to uh, a web browser and search vvox.com and log in using the ID provided. Good. All right, so I'm going to close this file to see if it works and whether you know my name. Okay, very good. Okay, that's right. Okay, 99% of you know my name, right? Okay, okay, good. So can you do this quickly, right? So that we can get to the real questions. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll now. Good. So roughly 90% from China, 3.5% from India, 1% from US as well, and then uh, probably 1 or 2% from EU, and then 5% from other countries. Okay. Okay, so this is the real question. So rights issued are offered to existing shareholders or all investors. Okay, so in 3 seconds, I'm going to close the poll. Okay, so let's see what you guys think. Very good. So 97% of you have answered that right issues are right issues are issued are entitled existing shareholders to buy additional shares. So these are offered only to existing shareholders, right? So when a company makes right issues, these are offered only to existing shareholders. Okay, so the next question is right issues transfer value from existing shareholders to new shareholders. Okay. Make a choice quickly, guys. It's like yes or no question, right? You just have to press the button. Good. All right. So let's see. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So rights issue transfer value from existing shareholders to new shareholders. 80%, roughly 80%, 79% have answered it correctly. That's very good. Okay. So it does not result in transfer in value because there are no new shareholders. In the previous question, we know that right in the previous question I asked you, rights issues are offered to existing shareholders, right? So which means there are no new shareholders, right? If there are no new shareholders, then there is no point of, you know, there's no way in which you can transfer value to new shareholders because there are no new shareholders. Rights issues are only offered to existing shareholders, right? So there are no new shareholders. Okay, so let's see, well, how do you do on this problem? So X rights price is lower than the subscription price, which in our example we denoted it by PS. X right price, option 2, is higher than the market price before the rights issue, which we call the pre-right price, okay, P naught, or the X right price is between the market price, which is X right, which is before the rights issue, right, pre-right price, and the subscription price. Okay, 5 more seconds and then I'll close the poll. Okay, good. So I'm going to close the poll now. So let's see, how did you do on this one? Good, very good. Okay, the X right price is between the market price and the subscription price. So that's what we have seen. What was the market price in our example? P naught, £6. What was the subscription price? PS, £4 and 65 pence, right? And what was the X right price? £5 and 70 pence, right? £5 and 70 pence is between P naught and PS, right? So X right price is between the market pre-rights market price and the subscription price. Okay, but it's good that a lot of you have answered it correctly. Okay, good. So that's the rights issue. That was the rights issue, right? Okay. Any questions in rights issue? If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And if not, then we can move on to our second topic, or the main topic for this session. All right. Okay, good. So let's move on to our main topic for today. Okay, let me just stop recording for a second.